And odor control, our biggest expense here. Continuous addition of ferrous chloride, caustic shock dosing, and odor scrubbers. The odor scrubbers are not nearly close to the cost of the other two programs. Ferrous chloride, we actually add ferrous chloride at 5 different locations. Our San Jose Creek WRP, Whittier Narrows WRP, in Southgate, Long Beach WRP, and then also in Inglewood. And it's all introduced into the joint outfall system with the intent of controlling odors throughout the joint outfall system, which is the backbone of our collection system. And so, you know, we looked at, is there a way, we have a real desire to optimize this, because this is the majority of our operation and maintenance cost is right here with this ferrous chloride. We've looked at it, we've made reductions up to only 2%. When we go more than 2% reduction, we start to have a negative impact at our joint water pollution control plant, where they have to add it back in to control H2S in their digesters. So we've done what we could in terms of reducing our reliance on ferrous chloride. So now we're looking at, and we have looked at, other alternatives using ThioGuard, which is the direct addition of magnesium hydroxide, as well as the PRISC system, which is a method which you can regenerate ferrous chloride or the ferrous chloride ion in there. And the idea there is you can inject hydrogen peroxide, get that ferrous back in there, and it will also help reduce odors further downstream. Now, we didn't have success with those two tests, and it probably due to the complexity of our system. It's just so many inputs to it that we would have positive results in some locations, and then as it got south of the cluster, if some of you are familiar with that, which is kind of a location where a lot of our big sewers intersect, after that it became ineffective. And really trying to find out why. We had various vendors and contractors working with us to try and understand it, but you know, we all racked our brains and we really couldn't figure it out. So we need to, we've been continuing using ferrous chloride, we're going to continue to use it, but we will always be open to looking at other options because of the cost associated with that program. Caustic shock dosing, we use the addition of sodium hydroxide, 50% and 25%. And this particular program is something that we did reduce about 50 locations that we used to do shock dosing at, but we didn't find the reason why we were shock dosing. I mean, that's not good to say, but the fact is that we had to audit this program to try and understand why we shock dose at certain locations. And there were 50 locations where we could not find the reason why. And it is possible that over the years there was a problem, but maybe that discharger is no longer there. But because we didn't have it well documented, we had to go back and say, well, if we don't have good reason to be doing this, we don't want to do it. So we know where those are, and yeah, we did it during the cold weather, which you're not going to expect as many odor complaints. But we'll monitor them and see what happens as the temperatures increase in the summer, and see if that really is a location that needs to be shock dosed, at least during the summertime. We've learned that during the wintertime, we don't have to do it. And I really don't like to do this, and one of the reasons you see this guy fitted out like this is a hazardous material. And having staff deal with hazardous material is not really something that's from a manager standpoint that you want. You want to minimize this. You know, they are trained to do this type of work, but there are circumstances that occur where you could potentially spill some of that chemical, and if it were to get into a storm drain, that opens up an entire other can of worms, which unfortunately I've had to deal with. Not with sodium hydroxide, but with ferrous chloride. And odor scrubbers. This is kind of what we use primarily when we have to work in a sewer for an extended period of time. So we will take this portable unit and utilize that to minimize any kind of odors. We don't want the people that live around to have to suffer that just because we're working in the sewer lines. Construction projects, we will lend these out to contractors whenever they're doing slip lining projects, for example, where you have to excavate and remove the top of the pipe and they have to sit there for a while. So we'll lend them those. These other canisters are just something that we utilize when we have certain locations where it's not effective to use caustic. Ferrous chloride isn't really in that area, and we'll drop these units in. These are just units that will hold granular activated carbon, and as those sewers vent through there, it'll eliminate the odors. The only problem with that is that you have to go periodically and replenish the carbon on that. In terms of capacity assessment, we do routine monitoring at all of our sewers. So right now it's, I think, at a frequency of maybe 3 to 4 years where we go through all of our sewer lines. We have a crew that handles that. They have AV meters. There's an example of one of our meters in a sewer line, and we measure flows. We leave them in place during the wet weather so that we can actually capture flow information during rain events. For some agencies, they want to capture flow during rain events, but they're limited in terms of their equipment. They may have to hire somebody and then wait for a storm. If you have to hire somebody, put these meters in, and that storm never comes, it usually comes right after you take it out. And so we're cognizant of that, so we purchase these meters, and they're dedicated to lines that we know or suspect have an I&I problem, inflow and infiltration problem. And that leads to these wet weather studies, which we've been doing primarily for sewers that we know have surcharging problems during rain events. In some cases, we're surprised. We don't expect the sewers to surcharge, but we had meters in them that demonstrated that they did surcharge, and then they end up in our relief and repair report. And that's what the engineering staff look at. They look at the information, and if it's for a small sewer, if it's a 15-inch diameter sewer or smaller, once the depth to diameter ratio reaches 50%, we're looking at considering hydraulic relief, or larger than 15-inch. When the diameter over depth reaches, or the depth over diameter reaches 75%, we start monitoring it. We have different categories for prioritization of relief needs. We use the A, B, and C method. If it's between 75 and 80, I think that's a C. 80 and 90, that's a B. Greater than 90 and increasing is a priority A sewer. Once it reaches priority A, we're generally looking to put out a sewer design or a design project to relieve that sewer line. And then in terms of hydraulic modeling, so far all we've really done there is gather data. It's something that we've wanted to do over a period of time. Higher priority day-to-day things that we do have kept us from really moving forward with this. This is something that we don't have the expertise to do, so our intention is really to go out with a project for this and utilize the data that we've captured over the past 5 years. We're also looking at extending. We have a contract with a flow monitoring company that does our larger diameter sewers. We don't have the capability of doing those, so we may extend that contract in the near future. And then how much we've actually spent on sewers, we have both relief and rehab. I think rehab includes replacement. It's about, we average, I mean, it looks like 2007 there wasn't much going on in sewer design, but on the average we do about $33 million a year and about 9 miles of sewer a year. This kind of shows you in response to some overflows that we had in 2005, we did a lot of relief work. These sewers were actually identified beforehand, and they were being worked off beforehand. This is the time really that they were constructed. And unfortunately, a few were a little too late. I'll go into pumping plants. 52 pumping plants. That red really doesn't mean anything. I just saw it on this slide, but you can see that they're located a lot on the coast and some inland. We have two up in the Santa Clarita Valley. One is a relatively large pump station. The other is nothing more than a temporary pump station while we're constructing an inverted siphon under the Santa Clarita River. Once that's done, that pump station will go away. But our pump stations range in various sizes. I mean, there's some pump stations that we have that are very small. Average flow is 40 GPM. And then we have some pump stations that are very large, which are